Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, how's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Everything is good, because even though the show is a little bit staggered by the time you see it, today is the day, well, no, I'll take that back. Today is the day that Milton plowed through Florida, south of me, thankfully, all right, and came out the other side. And I'm sure everybody knows what Hurricane Milton, the fears were. And no, luckily, right now, I'm running everything on a generator. But besides that, all I got is, I've got a lot of large oaks on my property, and I had a few branches come down. Thankfully, not on my fence. But yeah, I could tell that I'm going to have my work cut out for me as far as hauling some of these, branches. When I say branches, I mean branches. But outside of that, I'm very happy. I work with a local search and rescue team out here, and we offer services to, if anybody contacts us like, hey, I can't get a hold of a family member. All right. And so far we haven't gotten any requests, which means that's good. That's a good thing. As a matter of fact, then most of the people on the group are in the same scenario. A couple had close brushes where trees came down, like close to their house and things like that. I mean, actual trees. And I've had that. But like I said, luckily we haven't had a request for, hey, we can't get a hold of this person. So again, that's in this scenario where everybody was like, oh, that's a good thing. So yeah. And my chickens are doing fine. All my animals are doing fine. Yeah, I stowed my chickens away in their coop, because chickens, they would have stayed out there, and I probably would have found them in Kansas or something. But yeah, besides that, yeah, let me tell you something. Sometimes, you know how there's the anticipation of good things in these scenarios, even though I grew up in South Florida with, hurricanes were always there. I dealt with them. I think because of, this is we were getting so much, at least I was, so much blast with this thing about Milton and Milton is going to blow Florida away. And I was like, I was getting anxious. I mean, I dealt with Andrew back in 92, and I mean, other stuff afterwards, but I was like, what? And I realized afterwards, it's like, if this happens again, I cannot watch so much coverage about an impending end of the world scenario. Like, Florida will never be the same again. It's catastrophic. I was like, I cannot do that because I over worried. And again, don't get me wrong. Yes, you should prepare. Don't be stupid, especially if you're in an evacuation zone, which I was not. Yeah, you have to be realistic. But outside of that, I realized I cannot overwatch some of these newscasts, because some of them are a little bit dramatic. Shall we call it dramatic? Yeah. Believe me, because I saw different ones, and some of them were like, hey, this is the information, this is what it is. And then there's other like, and it's coming down and it's got 28-foot waves. And I was like, what? So, yeah, that, yeah. So like I said, I'm happy. I'm thankful that it's just a question of a lot of cleanup. And thinking, by the way, in the world of hurricanes, like I said, I grew up in South Florida. This is really late in the hurricane season. Officially, hurricane season ends in November. But this thing of October hurricanes, this is, like Andrew was end of August, July, August, maybe September are the months that you might get those. And this thing of all these hurricanes coming through in October. So I'm hoping, like, man, no more hurricanes, okay? No, no, no more hurricanes. And I was, I'm done with hurricanes. Thanks for 2024. But anyway, let's get on to the good part. And the good part is who is the guest today at Stories of the Supernatural. This is the first time he's been here. His name is Dan Harary. He's a native of Asbury Park, New Jersey, and he's best known for his 40 plus years of work in Hollywood as an entertainment industry publicist and as the owner since '96 of the Asbury PR Agency in Beverly Hills, California. Since the age of 15, Dan has worked with hundreds of famous celebrities from movies, TV, music, and pop culture, including pre-fame Bruce Springsteen, Kiss, and Fleetwood Mac. He's the author of 5 books, Flirting with Fame, Carrots After They Came, My Paranormal Life, and 5. I'm gonna put a link to his website in the credits of the show, but just in case we'll repeat at the end of the show, his website is danhararyauthor.com. And you can find all the information about his books there. He is also a longtime UFO researcher. He's been a member of the Southern California chapter of MUFON since 2007. He is also the creator and host since 2024, early 2024, of the Unix Network's podcast, Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. All right, in 2023, Dan conceived the LA-based Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and serves as its chairman. He lives in Beverly Hills, California, and is the father of an adult daughter named Anjuli. How are you doing today, Dan?
That was pretty good. You did a pretty good job there. It's
Thank you.
actually Anjali.
You know what? I was like,
You almost nailed. You were so close. But listen, even my late father, may he rest in peace, he never said it right either. So you're in good company.
okay. So, this interest in the paranormal or the weird, was it something that happened to you when your youth, or how did you end up there?
Okay, it's a very good starting question. I'll backtrack just a little bit. I did grow up in Asbury Park, New Jersey, which is the Jersey Shore area.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in high school, I had long hair. I played the drums, and I worked at a rock concert hall after school. In high school, I used to ride my bike there, and Bruce Springsteen used to play there all the time,
Wow.
and he wasn't famous then. So, when I tell people, yeah, I'm from Asbury Park, oh, they go, Bruce, Bruce, Bruce. I go, yeah, tell me about Bruce. I knew Bruce in 1973 before anyone else on the planet ever heard of the
Right.
guy. So that's where I'm from. My dad was an engineer, electronics engineer for the Army, and I will tell you more about him in a minute because something that happened with me and him in 1970 changed my life a few years ago. My mom was a school teacher. So that's where I'm from. I went to Boston University. So I grew up on the Jersey Shore. I went to Boston University and studied communications. When I was there, Howard Stern was 2 years ahead of me.
Wow.
And when I met him 10 years later in Hollywood, and he and I talked about Boston University. And then after college, I worked for a while at Columbia Pictures movie studios in New York City. And I worked with Brooke Shields for that summer, in summer of 1980. Very sweet girl. She was 15 at the time.
Oh my God. This
But
is, yeah.
but I was commuting. I didn't have any money, and I had to commute from the Jersey Shore into Manhattan. And anyone who's ever commuted into Manhattan 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, it's very, very hard. So I couldn't do it. I only did it for a while. That fall of 80, I had 2 different friends who were living in Los Angeles who had just moved to LA from New Jersey. And by pure coincidence, Marlene, they both called me the same week and
Wow.
said, hey, do you want to come visit Los Angeles? 2 separate friends who had just come to LA. I'm 24 years old. So I go to my father. I said, hey, Dad, I have these friends in LA. They want me to go visit. Should I move there? And my father said, schmuck, move there. Don't just visit, move there. So I moved to LA, and I've been here ever since. That 1-2 second conversation with my father,
It was like he's supposed to, can't you tell it's a sign? You
it,
should go.
it, I literally, it changed my entire life. My father said, schmuck, move there. That's all 3 words, schmuck, move there, 3 words. Changed my entire life. I've been here 44 years this week. I've been here
Wow.
44 years. Okay, so I'm a publicist. I've worked for movie studios. I worked for the American Film Institute. I worked at the Playboy Channel with Hugh Hefner, and it was what sucked about that is I'm a straight man, and I had just gotten married, and now I'm surrounded by naked, literally naked Playboy bunnies, and my wife was not happy
I was
about
gonna
that.
say, how'd you? I guess your wife must have been like, okay.
She was not happy, Marlene. I'm telling you.
She must have been
So
an understanding woman.
I launched my own company, as you mentioned, in '96. Last week was
Mm.
my 28th anniversary of my own business. So Asbury PR. This is my office in Beverly Hills. I live and work in my home here in Beverly Hills. I'm not a millionaire. I do live in Beverly Hills. I have made millions of dollars, and I've spent millions of dollars. So, you know what I'm saying? My
Wow.
mother,
Hey.
my mother always said, "Danny, if you made 1 million, you spent 1.2 million." I go, "I know. Tell me about it."
So she said, of course, she's your mom, and she should know, right?
And she just turned 90
Wow.
Tuesday, literally 2 days ago. My mommy turned 90. We just had a family reunion for her in New Jersey last weekend. My whole
Mm-hmm.
family was there. And my mother, God bless her, she's 90 and she's got another 90 years, I think, ahead of her because she's like the Terminator. My mother can't be stopped. She has every medical illness known to mankind and nothing can stop her. So we call her the
Let me tell
Terminator.
you something. Yeah, let me tell you something. I love those stories because um, I remember I used to work with a guy. His mom, she was elderly, and she was still working in the yard. And him and his brothers would call her the
Yeah.
ninja yard ninja.
Okay.
She
I
wasn't
understand that.
stopping.
Well, my mother's in a wheelchair and nothing stops her. I mean, it just literally, she can't be stopped. Okay, so now to answer your, all right. So I've been a publicist over 40 years, and that's all my entertainment. And I've worked with many, many, many very famous people. All of that, I'll just do a little plug.
Sure.
My very first book, I never can do this right. My first book came out 2 years ago. It's called Flirting with Fame. This is my Hollywood stories book, and I have a lot of great pictures in here. Me with Spielberg and Jerry Seinfeld and Mel Brooks and Hugh Hefner and Alice Cooper, all kinds of great people.
Is this what people that went out there and you knew them when they were kind of famous or getting famous and stuff like that?
Well, again, I went to college with Howard Stern. He wasn't famous. I
Right.
knew Jerry Seinfeld in 1981, 10 years
Okay.
before he was famous. I worked
Right.
with Bruce Springsteen 2 years before he was famous. I have this weird affinity, Marlene, to Brooke Shields. I worked with Brooke Shields when 15. She just became famous that year with that movie called The Blue Lagoon.
I was gonna say that was around the time of the Blue Lagoon.
Yeah, yeah. I hung with her and her mother during that summer that movie came out. So it's just I have a bit of an affinity.
Let me ask you something. Having dealt with people like that are like early in their career,
Yeah.
do you? And I imagine, but you tell me, do you see certain traits or feelings that that person's gonna make it, but that other one's like, eh?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. My best friend and I saw Bruce, I don't know how many times, for a dollar in the front row at bars for a
Uh huh.
dollar. And we were 16, we're underage. And me and my friend, because my best friend, and I'll tell you about him in a second, because he's also pretty famous now too. Uh, we used to look like now we were into he played guitar, I played the drums. We were in rock bands from the age of 12. 12.
Wow.
And we were into Led Zeppelin and the Stones and the Who and Creedence Clearwater and Mountain and all these rock. So we would see Bruce and he's doing Mad Men, Bummers, Drummers, and Indians in the summer, and we're like, what the hell is he talking about? We
Uh
had no
huh.
idea. So we saw him and we were like, what? Who is this? What is he talking about? I have another friend named Eric who lives in San Diego, and Eric in that same era used to say, "You guys, Bruce Springsteen's going to be bigger than the Beatles someday. He's the biggest. He's the most gifted man in the world." I go, Eric, are you insane?
Uh
And
huh.
then it happened. So I'm not a good judge. I'm not a good judge
Okay.
of pre-fame. I will say what they have in common is persistence, like Bruce,
Mm-hmm.
Howard, Jerry Seinfeld. These guys had a calling. They each had a call. I knew Jerry before he was famous too. They all had a calling, and they did not let anything get in the way of their calling, and they made it. Now, for every Bruce Springsteen, there's 100 million guitarists who never got anywhere.
But
So
at least what you're saying is they dealt with rejection and kept going.
nothing stopped. I mean, Bruce's father threw him out of the house when I think he was 16. And I used to see Bruce sleeping on the beach. Literally, he didn't. He was
Wow.
home. He was homeless for a while. He didn't have a car. We used to see him hitchhiking for years. I mean, the guy,
Yeah.
nothing was going to stop him. To his
Yeah.
credit, really.
Yeah.
Okay, now to answer your question. So I wrote my Flirting with Fame book that got published in 2022, and I'm like, wow, this is really fun to be an author. So I've been representing hundreds of people for 40 years, and when my book came out 2 years ago, I got to do media for myself. Finally, people are wanting to interview me for the first
Hmm.
time, and I'm like, this is fun to be on this side of the mic and the camera. I've done live TV, I've done lectures, I've done panels. So that was the first one. Then I wrote a sex book called Carrots, and most people don't want to ask me about my sex book, so we don't have to go there if you don't want to. But that
I
was
don't.
that was I was a sex addict after my divorce in '92. I was a sex addict for about 25 years, and it was pretty bad. It got out of control. People think it's funny if you're a sex addict. It's not funny when you're a sex addict and you're spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on sex that you
Uh
can't
huh.
really afford, and you're sending your kids to college. So it got out of hand. I curbed it, I calmed it down, and then I wrote how I recovered.
Is
So
that
that's
what Carrots is about? Is that
yeah,
like your
it's a
journey in that?
journey through sex addiction and
Mm-hmm.
and recovery. Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so a lot of people are skittish, and a lot of people think it's a wonderful book. So I don't know. My third book is called After They Came, and that's science fiction story about two benevolent aliens who come to Earth to save mankind. And it came out last year. And after it came out, Marlene, I befriended. It's incredible. Got so lucky with that book. That book changed my life because the top UFO researchers in the world
Okay.
have embraced that book, and I've become personal friends with dozens of those people. And
Okay.
because of that, I created the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. So if
Okay.
any of your viewers right now are into UFOs and aliens, and I've seen
Mm-hmm.
4 UFOs, and we can talk about that.
Okay.
If anyone's interested in aliens and UFOs, this is from the scientific research side. This is not
Mm-hmm.
dressing up like Mr. Spock for Halloween. These are the top UFO researchers in the world.
Yes.
Okay.
Fact
And it's
based, another word.
Richard Dolan, Nick Pope, Steve Bassett, Paul Hynek, Whitley Strieber, Travis Walton. I mean, the list, if you look, all right, so that website is hollywooddisclosurealliance.org. And if anyone's
Okay.
interested, go there. It tells you how to join if you'd like to be a member. hollywooddisclosurealliance.org. Half of our members, Marlene, are UFO researchers and experiencers, the top people in the
Mm-hmm.
world. The other half, this is what's interesting, the other half are Hollywood writers, producers, and directors. My
Okay.
idea, I thought of it. My daughter created the logo and the website. And so we're putting together people who have ET and UFO stories together with Hollywood screenwriters and producers
Right.
so that the goal is to bring real life, here's what I say. The goal of HDA is to bring real life paranormal stories experienced by real life people
Right.
to the screen. And we're
Yes.
doing that. There have been several TV shows that are being developed as we speak through that organization. So
Right.
that's
There's
pretty
a lot
cool.
of ordinary people have incredible stories.
A
And
lot of
sometimes it's a
people,
one time experience they've had that just that one time.
a
And
lot
then
of
you get,
people, yes. And a lot of people, especially Hollywood celebrities, are very hesitant to talk about it
mm,
because
yes.
they think people will think they're crazy,
Hmm.
or there's still a stigma, little green men,
Yes.
all that stuff.
Yes.
Now, in the last few years, if you follow ufology, there was a guy last year, David Grush, who came forward last year. He
Yes.
testified before Congress for 3 hours,
Hmm.
and he said extraterrestrial life is real. We have non-human biologic entities on the earth, living and dead. We have extraterrestrial craft and technology. We've had it for 80 years, and he testified under oath before Congress for 3 hours, and it was in the New York Times. So this a lot of extraterrestrial stuff is real. Not everything is
Hmm.
real, but a lot of it is real. And my group, and certainly my members who live in Washington D.C., they're working on
Yes.
what's called disclosure. Disclosure is they're trying to get Congress they're working with Chuck Schumer and Tim Burchett in Congress to try to get a bill passed that will protect whistleblowers so they can go to Congress and say, I know I've worked with live aliens, I've worked with dead aliens, I've worked with ET technology, I've worked with ET craft. We've reverse engineered it. There are at least 100 people waiting in line right now.
Unfortunately, ufology has a history, especially where people were getting discredited if they ever came forward
Well,
with any type of disclosure.
that's the modus operandi. That's the Men in Black. That's if you follow this, follow ufology, the history, very quickly. In 1947, the Roswell crash happened. That really, truly happened. It was not a weather balloon. It really, truly happened. People on their deathbed who were there swore to their families on their deathbeds.
Yes.
There were aliens. There was a UFO craft, and it was taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. So that really happened. When it happened, they issued a press release that day. That press release ran all over the world, and it said that Roswell Air Force Base recovered a flying disc. Well, President Truman's head exploded, and he called them, or whoever called for Truman, called them and said, "Are you guys idiots? Who are you to tell the world that ETs exist? That's not your call. That's my call. I'm the president, right?"
Yeah.
So somebody got yelled at, and the next day.
Sure.
The next day, they said, "Sorry, we messed up. It was a weather balloon. So that was day one of what my partner Steve Bassett calls the truth embargo. President Truman began the truth embargo in July 1947. From that day till today, there are elements in the military and the government who are keeping all the ET and all the UFO secrets from the world, including several U.S. presidents. I know for a fact that Jimmy Carter asked to be looped into the ET files, because I know this from a man who was in the room. And George H.W. Bush Sr., George Bush Sr., who was the head of the CIA, said to Jimmy Carter, who was the president,
Yeah.
"Mr. President, that's above your pay grade. You're not allowed."
Right, exactly. There's like,
He said it because I know this from a guy who was in the room. The lawyer that was in the room. Yeah. They don't tell every president. So whoever control, there was a group, Truman created a group called Majestic 12. And the Majestic 12 were 12 men from the military, government, and science who were in charge of retrieving craft, retrieving aliens, and covering it up, and discrediting every single person who thinks they saw an alien walking down their street. No, it was a child. It was a deformed child. It was a swamp gas. It was geese. You saw geese flying in the air. That still goes on. That still goes on.
Let me tell you something. Mac Brazel was the one that recovered
that
Roswell thing. Forever after, he had made comments. First of all, he was very tight-lipped about it, but the few comments he ever made was that he was sorry he had found it and come forward with it, as in, and some people interpreted that he was threatened. Him and his family were threatened, like, you need to shut up and never talk about this.
He was taken for, I think it was 10 days.
Yeah, like a week or something like that, yeah.
The CIA took him, and we don't know if he was beaten, but he was emotionally tortured. If you tell anyone, we'll kill you. We'll kill your children. We'll bury your bones in the desert. No one will ever find you. You are not to do. Yeah. So after he came out, people said he was never the same after that.
Yes. And I believe there was, can't remember his name now. There was a local radio announcer who was the one that blasted it out beyond, that little area, New Mexico. And something happened because shortly after this incident, he moved away. I can't remember to another state. He never came back.
Well, the CIA brought Mac Brazel back to that guy to do a radio interview, and Mac Brazel said, "Yeah, I was mistaken. It was a weather balloon. I was mistaken." And then they probably threatened that guy too. Yeah, they.
They say that it was unusual that all of a sudden he was like, "Yeah, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go do my show." He went to a bigger town. Never even came back to visit. He was like, "I don't want to be around there in any way."
They're going to kill you and your children and bury you in the desert. You're not going to want to stay there. Do you know who Travis Walton is?
Yes, Travis
Walton?
Okay. Yes.
So I befriended Travis Walton this summer at Contact in the Desert, which is the world's largest UFO convention. I am the publicist for that show. Okay. So I spent about an hour with Travis Walton. He, for those of you don't know, he is probably the world's most famous alien abductee who's still alive. He was taken in 1975 for 5 days in Snowflake, Arizona. He was taken in front of 6 witnesses. His best friends all saw this happen. And for the 5 days he was missing, the sheriff and the townspeople thought his 6 friends had murdered him,
And murdered him, yeah.
hidden his body. And they searched the woods for 6 days and they never found him. 5 days. And then he was returned by the craft. I think he was naked when he was returned.
Mm-hmm.
He had lost 10 pounds. He had a week's worth of beard on his face. He was dehydrated. I'm reading his book. He gave me an autographed copy. I'm reading it. And in his book, even though he's very famous, he wrote a best-selling book. It was a movie called Fire in the Sky, which is a really good movie. I've seen it 5 times. And he's in the book, he says, you know what? In retrospect, I wish I had never seen the UFO. I should never have gotten out of my truck and looked at it. I regret it. If I could go back in time, I never would have done it. So a lot of people do not have good extraterrestrial UFO.
No. That's one thing I could say. There's people that it's all kumbaya with the ETs, and there's others that, like a Travis Walton kind of thing, was like, it was horrifying. And
Yes.
yeah, they could go back in time. They'd be like,
He says in the book many times. I'm almost done with the book. It says yes. I've been asked, would I do it again? And the answer is absolutely not. It altered my life. I was perfectly happy guy,
Yeah.
and it altered my life. Now, in my HDA Hollywood Disclosure Alliance group, I have 3 female members who are very, very good friends of mine. All 3 have been abducted by extraterrestrials during their lives. They were all impregnated. They were months later taken and had the fetuses removed. And years later, they were taken and shown their hybrid children on a craft.
Wow.
So there's a lot of not good things that happen if you're taken. However, I only have one good story. I have a friend named Mark who is 60 years old. He lives in the Bay Area. He's a very successful businessman. He just turned 60. At the age of 5, he was taken by Pleiadian extraterrestrials aboard a huge craft. He was 5. And every few years, they take him and other people. They always take the same group of people every few years. And he said they're beautiful, they're warm, they're teachers, they're loving teachers. And they teach him and the others how to be kind to each other and how to be kind to planet Earth. 5 years ago, listen to this story. So 5 years ago, was it 10 years ago? I'm sorry, 10 years ago when he was 50, they took him on board. They said to the Pleiadians, said to my friend Mark, we need you to bring solar energy to the American Indians in the American Southwest. Tens of thousands of Native Americans don't have power. We want you to bring solar energy to them. They then, Marlene, implanted in his head a schematic for a new kind of solar energy technology device. They bring him back to Earth. He meets with engineers. He creates this device. And in the last 10 years, he's brought solar energy to tens of thousands of Native Americans.
Incredible.
And he's made millions of dollars.
Wow.
So that's a good story. So I'd rather be, if you're going to get abducted, my point is get abducted by Pleiadians.
Well, you always hear that, there's more than one group of ETs around.
Yes.
Some are observers, some are like the Pleiadians, helpful, and then there's others that's like, you don't ever want to get caught by those.
You don't want the tall grays, or the short grays, or the reptilians. You don't want them. You can stay away from them. But if you see a Pleiadian, and usually Mark says they're like 6-7 feet tall. They have the long white hair, the incredible sky blue eyes. And he said they're so beautiful. He calls them the light beings. He said they radiate light. Now, I know Mark quite well. I've spent a lot of time with him. He's either batshit crazy or 100% true. And I know him. He's very successful. I got to go with he's telling the truth. Really.
Well, let me tell you something, because let's face it, if he could say they put a schematic in my head and it was like, yeah, but it doesn't work, it's like, all right. But
yeah, right, exactly. They implanted a piece of technology. All right, let me answer you now. So now I'm going to answer your question from half hour ago. Okay. So last year during the summer, I was a little bored, so I wrote my brand new book, which is this one called My Paranormal Life. And
I love
it's the
that cover, by the way.
yeah, isn't it a great cover?
It's a great cover.
It's got a, a ghost, it's got an angel, a UFO, and yeah, and a gargoyle. And I'm going to give you the gargoyle story right now, but this
Okay,
just came
great.
out a few months ago. Okay, so last summer I was bored, and what I do when I was bored, when I'm bored, is I'll write a book. So I'm 68. Why not write a book? So I wrote
Sure.
that book last year. It came out in May this year. Um, when I was 5, and that book is true life paranormal experiences that I've had in my real life. It's not science
Really?
fiction since
Okay.
the age of 5. Okay. Now here's the first one, and people love this story. This is probably one of my great stories. When I was 5, I lived with my parents, obviously, in Asbury Park, New Jersey, in suburban New Jersey neighborhood. And across the street, I had 2 little girlfriends. I think they were 7 and 9, so they were a little older than me. And the 3 of us used to play together because in those days you could play outdoors and not get
Yeah,
raped and
exactly.
killed.
Yeah, yeah.
So the 2 little girls, Kathy and Lizzie, they were sisters. They came, knocked on my door. I went out. We used to climb fences and trees together. I remember that's what we did. One day, this has got to be 1961 because we moved later that year. So I must have been 5. I'm with these 2 older girls, and they said, "Let's go climb the billboard sign at the end of our street
Oh
that
boy.
is in front of the drugstore." Okay, so a block from my house, and then a block away, and then a block down, lower,
Right.
was a mini mall, and there was a drugstore, and there was a 30-foot tall billboard sign. Okay.
Oh,
So these 2 girls, we got inside the sign. It was the wooden skeleton lattice inside behind the sign, the frame of the sign. And they start climbing, and they're climbing, and they're climbing. Marlene, I remember, like, I can't. How am I? That's high. I can't do this. They, come on, Danny. Come on, Danny. You could do. So I'm climbing up. I'm climbing up, and I'm having fun. It's a sunny day. I'm climbing up. I don't know how high I got, but it was pretty high. I had to be pretty high. And then, Marlene, at some point as I'm climbing straight up, I remember my hands lost the grip on the beam that I was holding because I remember this, and I was just hypnotized 2 weeks ago, and I remembered it. My hands let go of the beam, and I fell from the sign. It had to be at least 15 feet, if not higher. It had to be. So what I remember is when I fell, I was now on my back. My
yeah. I was
face,
gonna say you landed on your back.
no. So I was climbing straight up, okay? But when I let go of my hands, suddenly my whole body went like this, and I'm falling to the earth, but my face is looking at the blue sky, right? And
Uh
I'm
huh.
I'm falling in slow motion. Okay, I'm falling in slow motion. The girls above me were screaming, "Oh, Daddy, you're falling!" Right? I remember they're screaming at me, and I'm falling in slow motion. I'm thinking this isn't very good. That's all I remember. Now from there, I have missing time.
Okay.
Okay, I have missing time. I don't know if it was 5 minutes. I don't know if it was 2 hours, but I have missing time, and I just got hypnotized by a very famous woman, and we couldn't retrieve what happened.
Let me know. Talk about because I used to do hypnotherapist. So hypnotherapist
Well,
for many years, and we'll talk about it later. But keep going with that story. That's
well,
so
Yvonne
interesting.
Smith is probably the most
Yes, I know
famous
who
one
Yvonne Smith
in
is.
the
Yes.
world. She's a friend of mine, so she just anyway. So
Okay.
I'm falling, and now I have missing time. So I wake up on a couch inside a house 2 blocks away from the sign. No one is
Right.
home in this house. It's a furnished house. No one is home. I'm laying on there, and I remember my eyes are closed, and I opened my eyes. I sat up. Now I'm 5 years old. I sat up, Marlene. I looked around. I said, "Hello, hello. Is anyone here?" No one was home. And my first thought to myself was, "Am I dead?" I remember thinking that. I do.
Oh my
Am I
God.
dead? So no one was home. So I stand up. I turn to the right to leave through the front screen door. And here's the great story. At the screen door is a 7-foot tall cryptid being. There's a being, and I swear to you, this is true. My mother thinks I dreamed this, but it's my first memory. There's a 6 or 7 foot tall cryptid. His bottom half was like a donkey's body. It had like 2 legs.
Holy crap.
It had like
Okay.
donkey legs and a donkey torso, and then from the belly to the shoulders was like a V, and it appeared to me that he had had wings at one point. It looked like he had like an angel had had wings. but
Mm-hmm.
on either the top of the two shoulders were bony stumps. Bony stumps.
Like
It looked
nubs. Okay.
exactly right. My joke is God took a hedge clipper and cut off this guy's wings. Okay, so there's nubs,
Uh,
and then he has the face of a bull. Face of a bull, and he's white chocolate color. He's white chocolate color.
oh man.
So I see this thing turns his head over his right shoulder and he goes like this. Like that. He snorts. He snorted at me.
Oh.
He snorted at me. Right at my face. And I got in that moment yeah, I saved your life, you little bastard, but I really didn't want
Yeah.
to. That's what
No,
I
I
got.
can't.
So I instantly thought that he doesn't like me very much. I wasn't scared. Okay.
Right. I was gonna ask you how'd you.
Yeah, because I can put myself right there, and Yvonne put me there I was there, saw it again. He snorted at me. I looked at him. I said to myself, he doesn't like me. He left through the door. Now I don't remember if he vanished or walked through the door or dissipated into dust. I wish I could remember, but I can't. So he went out, and then I went out through the door, same door as him. I look
Uh-huh.
around. I would look around. I didn't know where I was. And my mother's house, my parents' house was pink. We had the only pink house. So I see the pink house 2 blocks to the left, and I'm like, oh, there's mommy's house. So I walked home. And then that's the entirety of the story. So here's the questions. One, did I die? And this thing brought me back. Two, did this thing catch me and save my life? Three, why didn't these two little, that's what everyone asks me, why didn't the two little girls like, get me and bring me to my mom's house?
Well,
They
I
knew
was
where
gonna
to
ask you afterwards. Did they ever say anything to you?
well,
I know they're
I
children,
was
but
5. I was 5. And I lived there another year, maybe. I'm trying to find them now on social.
okay.
I would do anything to say, hey, remember when I fell off that sign?
Let me tell you something. It's like it sounds like a minotaur. Kind of the closest thing I can think of.
My daughter, that's very good. My daughter said she thinks it was a gargoyle.
Okay. All
Now,
right.
oh, you would know this better than me. A gargoyle, according to my research, protects people and buildings within
Yes.
a certain perimeter of land, within a certain area of land.
Yes.
So, so perhaps there
I
was, he was protecting me personally, or he was protecting my neighborhood. But whatever this thing, I know intuitively, I really truly believe this, that he saved my life.
Let me tell you something. That's one heck of a thing for a kid of your age to come. Let's go with the thing that you blacked out and you came up with something in your mind. Something like that is most 5-year-olds don't know how to come up with that description of what you
Well,
just said.
most of my friends who have had ET experiences,
Uh
this is
huh.
interesting. Most of them, many of them, Marlene, said when I was 5, such and such. When I was 5, when I was
Really?
5. 5 is I know this from many of my members in my group. 5 seems to be like my friend Mark with the Pleiadians. He was 5. 5 is like the age when maybe your paranormal like stuff is going to
Okay.
start. Well, for me, if that's not a paranormal story
Yeah.
that I
No.
just
That's
told
pretty
you,
much.
I don't know what the hell it
Let me
is.
ask you something. How about physically? How did you feel? Were you hurt? Did your
That's
back
another great
hurt?
question. I was perfectly fine. I wasn't cut or scratched. I had no broken bones. I wasn't bleeding. Now, you think, even if I fell 10 feet, right? Let's say
Right.
10, I
Yeah.
mean, on my back, I would have had the wind
Yes.
knocked out of me at the
Yes.
least,
Yes. You do.
at the least. But like, even if I shook that off, I would have gotten up and I would have walked home to mommy's house. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't go to some stranger's house
Right. Right.
blocks
This is what I'm
away.
thinking. Like you're gonna come into somebody's house and lie down and
Yeah, a house I've never been to before or since. And no one was, it's not like, because I knew my mother's friends. I knew the neighbors, right?
right.
Would have
Right.
gone to a neighbor's. Marlene, there was no one. No one was home. There was no one in the house.
That is such a and like you said, I'm sure that when you told your mom, she must have been like, "What?"
Told my mom when this. All right, so in this book, my paranormal life. Let me read you the
Okay, go
dedication
ahead.
page,
Yes.
because I, I saw my mother the other day, and she and I were laughing so hard. All right, the dedication page to my book is for my mother, Joan, who believes not one of the stories in this book. Not one of the stories.
Let me see. There
My
we
mother,
go. This is the
yeah,
cover
right.
of your thing
My
there.
mother thinks I'm batshit crazy. So she doesn't
It's
believe
like
it. It was a dream. It was a dream. So everything with
Of
my mother that's
course.
paranormal is a dream.
This is such a great cover.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that cover.
So anyway,
So,
go ahead.
all
So,
right. So the first chapter in that book is called My Gargoyle, and that's the story that I just told you. I was
mm-hmm.
just hypnotized. Yvonne Smith, because I was thinking perhaps it was an ET that had saved me, and I was on a ship, maybe, or something. And Yvonne, I was at Yvonne's for hours, and we were trying to get more, and all I could remember is what I just told you. I couldn't get it any deeper.
All
And
right.
she said, Dan, I've hypnotized thousands and thousands of people. She goes,
Mm.
that's the best parent. She goes, that's not an extraterrestrial story. She goes, that's the best paranormal story I've ever heard personally. And I
Yeah.
said, Yvonne
Yeah.
Smith, coming from you, that's rare praise.
Let me tell you something. So let me ask you, later in life, you didn't remember it, or you blocked it out as you grew older, or
I've
what
had it.
happened?
I've had that memory in the back of my mind my entire life. I never forgot it.
Okay, but you just
I
didn't remember the.
I didn't. It wasn't. I didn't bring it out at parties. Do you know what I mean? It's just something I had in the
It's like, all
back.
right.
It was there. It's something that happened. Now, when I last year, I said when I sat down with myself, I said, I think I have a lot of paranormal stories. I should write them down. So that was the
Uh-huh.
first one, and then the book is chronological. So
Okay.
I've had many. I have a great poltergeist story if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Okay. So in another chapter in the same book is called My Grandfather the Poltergeist.
Okay.
This is many years later. So in 2003, I moved into an apartment with a girlfriend here in Beverly Hills. We moved in together to an apartment in Beverly Hills, 2003. She moved in a few days before I did. We got this wonderful apartment. She moved in. I'm at work in Hollywood. She moved in. The three moving men are outside on the front, on the street at the moving truck. She's inside putting things away. And she hears behind her, she hears, Joe. So she turned around. No one was in the house. She called me. She goes, Dan, I'm in the house. I go, yeah. How's it going? She goes, somebody just called out Joe. I said, well, it had to be the moving men, right? She goes, no, I'm looking at them. They're on the street. There is no one in this house right now. Okay.
Whoa.
That's part one. Okay, fine. That weekend I moved in. So now she and I are living together. She worked for the TV show The Sopranos, by the way. So now I move in together. So that weekend we're watching American Idol. The only time I've ever seen that
Okay.
show in my life, I remember. And we hear like a thud, like a plop and a thud in the dining room. We're in the living room. We hear thud. I get up in the dining room. There had been a paper sack that had been there for a week, filled with kitchen utensils, just sitting off to the side, things that we
Uh-huh.
hadn't put away yet. On the top of it was a kitchen sink dish drainer, those thing with the slots. It
Yes.
had been laying across the top of this sack for a week. Now it had popped out of the bag, turned upside down, and it was 3 feet in front of the bag on the
Mm.
floor. So I just looked at it and I'm thinking, well, there's no earthquake. So
Okay.
how did that happen? Okay, that's fine. Put it back in the sack. Okay. Now the next one is great. This is great. A week later, my girlfriend's in the kitchen making dinner one night. I'm in the living room. We had a beautiful fireplace. You know those long decorative matches, the long
Yes. Yes.
they come in a canister with things
Mm-hmm.
on the end. So Marlene, I take the end off of the canister, one of the ends off. Now there's 50 there's 50 matches in this thing. A normal person would have reached in and taken one or two, right? I reach in, I grab all 50, and I pull
Okay.
them out so fast of the canister. Now they're all on fire. I have a torch in my hand. I literally have a 50 match torch in my hand in Beverly Hills in a building. It's inches in front of my nose. I'm thinking my eyebrows are going to go up in flames, right? So I was so startled by
Uh-huh.
this. I just staring at this torch in my hand, not knowing what to do. I literally was frozen. I'm like, I can't believe I'm such a schmuck to do this. As I'm staring at the torch, out of my left eye, from the dining room, flying from the dining room, flying through the dining room, through into the living room, is this blob of dark blue, dark gray smoke, a big blob of smoke.
Mm-hmm.
My joke is, imagine Casper the Friendly Ghost without a face, and he was blue and black. It just flew through the air. I saw it coming. I saw it coming. It came up to my hand.
Okay.
It grabbed this torch of 50 matches. It grabbed it. It pulled it out of my hand, and it threw the torch into the fireplace. And then it dissipated and went through the wall. And I swear to on my daughter, I swear
Eh,
to God, it's a true story. So I'm like, what the hell was that? What?
yeah.
Because I saw it coming with my left eye. It,
Right.
it, it I felt it almost like a hand pull these matches. It pulled them out of my grip, and it threw this.
What was? Let me ask something. How old was this house that you were in? Was it an older
Oh,
house or what?
100 had to be 100 years old.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Keep going.
like in
I'm just.
1920s. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I'm like, now my girlfriend is in the kitchen, so she missed it, right? I mean, there's
Right.
no witnesses. I'm telling you, as God is my witness, that really happened. So I'm
So
like,
this ghost is worried you're going to burn the house down.
more than that, and I'll tell you when we get to the conclusion of this. I think the
Okay.
ghost was protecting me personally, because
Okay.
my whole face could have gone up
Yeah.
and down, right? Not I don't have any hair, but I mean I do have eyebrows and a nose, something. Okay, that's the third thing. Okay, now the story intensifies. A couple nights later, my girlfriend and I are sleeping. Middle of the night, we hear crash, really loud crash. 3 a.m. We go in the master bathroom. Something had lifted her tall uh, drinking glass of water, which was on the shelf by her toothbrush. Something had lifted it up and thrown it really
That
hard
takes
on
a
the
lot of
floor,
kinetic force right there.
really hard on
Yeah.
the floor because it was in a million pieces of glass on the floor. We looked at each other. We like, there was no earthquake. There's no wind. There's not an air conditioner. I'm
Right.
like, how on earth did that happen? Okay. Okay. Now it gets better. That now in this era, my daughter was 12 and my son was 14, and they used to visit me. I was divorced. They used to come visit me on the weekends. I had a room for each of them on the weekends when they
Uh,
came to visit me and my girlfriend. So that weekend they came. In the middle of the night, my son, we're all sleeping. My son screams, "Dad, there's somebody in my room."
oh my God.
So if you're a parent, which you are,
Yes.
I'm a
Yes.
parent. I flew out of my bed, like I flew out of from a dead sleep. I flew across the room, ran into my son's room. He's shaking. He's standing there shaking. He's 14. He goes, "Dad, someone is in my room and they're knocking on my walls all around the room." And then he showed me knock, 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 all around the room, including the glass screen of his TV, which I found that to be remarkable. So he even showed me
Yes.
that it even knocked on the TV. So 360, it knocked around 360. And he was shaking. And I go,
Yeah.
"Jordan," I go, "that's amazing. Because you believe me, Dad." I go, "Yeah, of course I believe you. I believe you." I said, "Here, listen, it's 3 a.m. Go back to sleep. We'll leave your door open. We'll all go back to sleep. And in the morning, we'll discuss this." Okay, fine, right? So he goes back to sleep. The next morning, me, my daughter, and my girlfriend were in the kitchen making breakfast. My son is sleeping in his room. We hear slam really hard, slam his door, bedroom door, slammed closed really hard. And he
Okay.
goes, "Dad, someone just closed my door." Because remember, the
Okay.
door was open all night, right?
Yes.
I run down the hall. I go to open the doorknob to open his door. It felt like something was pushing the door closed
Against.
from the other side for maybe 10 seconds. I'm like, how come I
Right.
can't open this door? So finally, I opened this door. My son is sitting up in bed. He's shaking. He goes, "Dad, something just slammed the door." I said, I know it wasn't you. Clearly, I know it wasn't you. He was sleeping. At this point, I go, "Okay, family, we have to do something about this." So, believe it or not, we had a Ouija board, and I don't recommend this highly to people, but we had a Ouija board.
Okay.
I pulled out the Ouija board. I put it on the hallway floor, and it was me, my girlfriend, my son, my daughter. We all had our hand on the plastic movable part, which is called a planchette. We all had our
Yes.
hands on the planchette, and now I'm in charge of this because I'm pissed. So I said, "Is there a ghost in this house?" "Yes," right away. "Yes." "What's your name?" "Joseph." "Joseph, where are you from?" Now, Marlene, this is the killer. "Where are you from?" "Syria." Now,
Holy.
Marlene, wait, Marlene. My father's father, Joseph, was from Syria.
But did you connect that at that point, or
I
were you
knew.
still
I
like,
started crying. I knew instantly. I knew instantly. I said, "I go, Grandpa Joe, is that you?" Yeah, yes. Now this is the year 2003.
all
My
right,
grandfather Joe died in 1967 when I was 11.
wow?
Here he is on my Ouija board in 2003. So
And you're thinking,
I start crying because I loved this. I knew him when he died. I cried a lot that day. I was 11, so I knew it was him. Syria? How do you guess? How does a ghost guess that one? He was exactly correct.
right?
Okay, I go, Grandpa Joe, is that you? Yes. So now I'm crying. And then I said, Grandpa, why are you here? And it wrote, Jordan. That's my son's name, Jordan. I said, what do you want with Jordan? And it wrote, to teach. To teach. Now, my grandfather taught Hebrew. He was an
Okay.
Orthodox Jewish cantor in Brooklyn, New York. He never met my son, obviously. He died when I was
Mm-hmm.
11, but he wanted to teach my son Hebrew. Think about that. So I knew it was him. Then I asked another question that I don't remember, but it wrote an answer in Hebrew, and I
Okay.
had it translated soon thereafter. And he wrote in Hebrew, I am a stranger here. Now that's pretty,
Let me ask you
whatever.
something, just out of curiosity. Was your son's age at 14? Is that usually the time?
He had had his bar mitzvah the year before, my son.
Okay. All right.
So my grandpa, my dead grandpa was about a year late. You know what I'm saying? He's
Yeah,
about a
but I'm
year.
saying that it was not coincidental as far as the timing, as far as your son's age.
Exactly. Good point. Yes. Very, very close. Very,
Okay.
very close. Because my grandfather, wanted all of his descendants to have bar mitzvah. He was super Jewish, man. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah. So had he been alive, he would have probably come to my son's bar mitzvah. Anyway, so then he wrote, I am a stranger here in Hebrew. And now my girlfriend, my son, and my daughter and me, we're all crying because it's so intense. And I think my daughter said, Dad, please make it stop.
She was wigged out, huh?
They were very upset. They were pale. So I said, Grandpa Joe, I go, I love you. I miss you. You were my favorite grandparent. I go, but and I actually said, you're scaring the shit out of my family. I said that. I said, you're scaring the shit out of my family, Grandpa. I need you to please leave. Please leave my house. Please go find peace. But I can't have you here anymore. And then the planchette, Marlene, it went, yes. And then that was it. And I swear to God, I lived there for another year. Nothing else ever
That
happened.
was my next question. That's it. No more, nothing.
Nothing, not even close. Nothing ever happened after that. So that's my
Mm.
grandfather, the poltergeist. I mean, I think that's a pretty good one.
Let me tell you something. That's incredible. And like you said, that there was that when because sometimes you'll hear people that when they use a Ouija board or anything like that for divination purposes, some people will say, well, it's the subconscious, you know. But when it comes up with information that there's no way you could hold in your subconscious mind, then that's where you start looking at the source of this is not me or one of the people that's got their hand on the planchette.
Well, I was the only one who knew he was from Syria.
That's what I'm saying. But no, but
Okay.
you're telling me that he gave you some information in Yiddish,
But but
right?
but but when he said Jordan to teach, and he was a Hebrew teacher, I mean,
Right.
had he been alive in real life, he would,
Mm-hmm.
because I had to send my son Jordan to a Hebrew a tutor. Had my grandfather been alive, he would have taught my grandson, his great grandson, he would have taught him Hebrew.
Right, because I was his
So
great grandson.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then he wrote a phrase in Hebrew. I mean, I don't speak Hebrew. I had to have this translated by my
Okay,
dentist.
that's what I'm saying.
By
Yeah.
my dentist. I don't speak Hebrew. So I know it was him. If it wasn't him, people said, "Oh, it wasn't him. It's the devil." My ex-wife, it's the devil trying to manipulate. I'm like, well, if the devil is pretty good, man. He knew Syria.
Let me
He
tell you
knew
something. Were your kids okay coming
Hebrew.
back the other weekends, or were they still like that? Dad, we're
Well,
like,
well, well. Honest to God, once the poltergeist went away, there was no more crying in my house.
all right.
That was the end of it. So that real
Let me tell you
all
something though. But what your
that happened.
girlfriend said, that thing about Joe, you never made any connection to
Well, yeah,
who the
think
Joe.
about it. Joe,
Oh, okay,
Joseph,
okay,
right? So
okay,
yeah, it
okay.
was. Now here's the question there, Marlene. when she heard Joe, it's either my grandfather announcing himself
Okay.
Joe, like I'm here, like Joe, but
Uh-huh.
she said it like Joe. So maybe it was other spirits in the house welcoming my grandfather
Hey,
into
yeah.
the house, and they're like
Yes.
Joe, because my girlfriend said it went Joe. It was a question.
Uh-huh.
So I think it was other spirit. It was 100-year-old house. I
Yes.
think the other spirits recognized my poor dead grandfather, and they were welcomed. Oh, Joe, Joe. They welcomed him into
That's
my apartment.
incredible. That's
So yeah, Joe,
incredible.
Joseph, it's the same thing.
No, the most telling thing is that after that, that's it. No more activity.
Nothing else ever happened. And then my daughter actually that night said, "Dad, you got to throw that Ouija board away."
That's what I'm
I go,
talking
no,
about. I'm
no, I
saying.
want to keep it. She goes, no, 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 you got to throw it away. She watched me. She walked me to the trash dumpster. She goes, I want to make sure that that's nowhere in the
Yeah.
house. So I had to throw it away.
Yes. Let me tell you something. That was a wise thing of her. I hate to say it, but she
I
was
have a
right.
good. I know we only have a few minutes. I have
No, no,
another
go ahead. Go ahead. Don't worry about that.
because you like ghost stuff. My dad and I were very close. He died a bad death. He died in April 2017. A couple days after he died, let's see, he died on a Monday. That Friday, I was in Simi Valley, not Simi Valley. That Friday, I was in Silicon Valley for work at a meeting, and I was in a hotel and asleep. It had to be 3 in the morning, about 3, 4 in the morning. I'm asleep in a hotel in the middle of the night. This is 4 days after my father died. My bed starts shaking in the middle of the night. And I thought it was an earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
And the bed's shaking. The mattress and the box spring are shaking. And from underneath the bed, and I swear to you, I swear to God, this is true, I heard my father's voice say, Danny, Jeannie changed my will. I sat up, my heart's beating. I go, Dad? I turn on the lights, not there. I look under the bed, not there. Jeannie was his second wife. He was the
Oh,
only person on earth who called her Jeannie. Her name was Jean. My father called her Jeannie. Danny, Jeannie changed my will. It was that loud. Long
wow.
story short, now my father had Alzheimer's the last 2 years of his life.
Okay.
My brothers and I, after I told him the story, we hired a lawyer. He contacted the wife in Florida, and long story short, she changed his will and his insurance policies while he had Alzheimer's. And my father was so upset. He told me that from the other side.
But let me ask you, this was before he died when you
This
heard
is
that?
he died on a Monday morning. This was a
So this was
Friday.
before he was.
No, 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 no. This was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This is 4 days
Oh,
later.
4 days. Okay, afterwards.
Right after he died. The bed shook. The bed shook, and he gave me a message, and it turned out to be true. My brothers and I had no idea. We didn't know. We had no idea. She changed his will. He was that upset. He
Wow.
was that upset. And then the week after that, in the middle of the night when I was back home, he turned my light in my bedroom. He turned my light on and off a few times. And then another days after that, I have a little drum set in my room, and which he gave me years ago. And in the middle of the night, my father starts playing my little drum set. It starts playing, and I knew it was him. I knew it was him. And I regret this, but I said, Dad, I know that's you. Please stop. You're scaring the shit out of me.
Yeah, no.
And
Yeah.
I regret that because he never came back after that.
Well, sometimes they do stuff like that just on their way out, in other words.
Yeah, no, I knew it was. I knew it was him. It's not even a question. Of course, it was him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are some of my
Let me tell
ghost
you
things.
something. The sometimes when we have experiences like that, when in other words, you can't rationalize it as in being a coincidence or anything like that because the information is so spot on.
Right.
It's a hard thing to escape. And by the way, I'm going to tell you something as far as your unrecovered memory that you say
The missing time.
a missing time.
Yeah.
One of the things our mind does, and the reason why I say this is that sometimes people will start getting, especially if it's a little bit traumatic. And again, it depends. Every person's different. Some people can handle things better than others, but sometimes the mind will do anything it can to stay sane. And sometimes that's why people, sometimes years afterwards, they'll start having very weird dreams. It's a subconscious saying, now you're ready to remember this. But in some cases, if your mind feels that that portion you could not handle it, you no matter how much they'll push, even under hypnosis, you will not recover it. You
That,
might two
yeah.
months from now, you might start off with like really weird dreams.
Yeah, Yvonne said I might remember something in the near future or
Yes, yes.
in a dream. But it
And the
was interesting.
subconscious will speak to you in symbols. It doesn't that's when
Okay.
people start having dreams like weird people they've never seen before, or places or things, and it's basically your subconscious talking to you in symbols. And besides just hitting you with it, it kind of starts like letting you have a little bit, and then and maybe you never will.
I'll be on the lookout. I mean, when she hypnotized me for the
Let me tell you something. That's one heck
when
of.
I fell off the sign, and again, this was 3 weeks ago. She
Let me t-
hypnotized me.
let me tell you something though.
Marlene, I was there. I mean, she had me.
Yes,
A
yes,
couple of things I remembered, like I remembered it was a sunny day and I'm walking down the street with these two little girls. They walked in front of me. I remembered that. I remembered that when I was climbing the wood, I saw the grain of the wood in the wooden beams. I
yes,
remembered a car horn had honked. I had never remembered a car horn. I remembered a cloud in the sky that was kind
yes.
of going by. So she like, now I couldn't get more information,
Let me tell you something. If you could, like you were
but
saying,
I
if
was
you can
there.
find those girls and
I
see
would
if
love to, because
God, that
they'd
would
be
be
in
great.
they would be in their 70s. They'd be in their
Wow.
I know their
Okay, but
names.
still,
I know their names. I thought I found one and she didn't write back, but I do have to try again. Actually, I
I
do.
know because they could tell you their, their version of what happened.
Well, imagine if they said, "Yeah, yeah, you were falling and then you vanished," or "Yeah, we didn't know we were going to go get you on the ground, but you were gone." Could you imagine? It would be
Yeah, that's.
such a
I'd
great
be like, man, that wow.
that would be a great piece to
You
answer
have
that
to do a
story.
revised version on your
To do
book.
second edition of my book. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yes, to see that, just to hear what they would tell you, at these
I would
decades later.
I'd love to find them. I haven't seen
This
them
is
since I'm 5 years old. So
plus also if you recover that memory. By the way, I'm also going to tell you when you said that thing about, I've had people contact me about wanting to be able to, when you said that people will say like Travis Walton, I wish I could go back, and if
and
I
not
had
do
a,
it. Yeah, not do it. Yeah.
I've had people contact me about experiences they've had where they've asked actually asked me to hypnotize them to forget something, because that one event, that one sighting, that one experience has tilted their reality so badly that they want to go back to, that ignorance is bliss kind of thing.
Yeah.
They want me like, take me back to why I can't remember this event. And I tell them I can't do that.
For me,
We could just detach the emotion from it, but
well,
they get anxious and everything.
for me personally, my paranormal events, I've sort of embraced. Not maybe not.
Hmm.
I've embraced them because why? I wrote a book about all of them that I could remember. I've not, other than I've had very very strange things happen with me and women, and that's in my sex book, because that's literally inexplicable. Inexplicable things have happened with me and women. My joke is that I was cursed in a past life with women, and that's a whole separate book.
Well, okay.
But I've embraced the paranormal. I've seen 4 UFOs, the poltergeist, the gargoyle, my dead father's ghost, the UFOs stuff. I've heard voices tell me things to do, and every time I've heard a voice, I did what it told me, and it came true, and it embellished my life for the positive. So anytime something paranormal happens, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. You know what I mean?
Right. In other words, you don't
Unlike
shut it down.
I was never anally probed or raped that I know of, right, by aliens when I was
Yeah, no, I was
7.
going to tell you that Travis Walton, that version, when you were saying you're talking about his book, that's the one that I think is like what caused a lot of people like, I don't want to be abducted by an alien.
No, you don't want to be abducted by an alien unless you're Mark Glenn Moore and they're Pleiadians. And listen, if you ever want to interview him, he's a great interview.
Well, let me tell you, and that's the thing, and then you hear about the reptilians, and then you're thinking, what are these other kind of middle-aged cattle? And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I don't want to know them. I don't want to. I've
yeah,
seen
it's like,
4 UFOs, all of them were. Let's see. I've seen four. One, two, three of them were enthralling. One was just a light that went back and forth. But I don't know that I want an extraterrestrial knocking on my door. You know what I mean? Like, I know
well,
they're
no,
real.
no.
I know
See,
they're
and
real.
this is
There's
the
no
thing,
question
because you,
about it.
like you say it, and you work in the movie industry and everything. One thing is when you go see a movie and you're like, wow. But then the credits roll, and you're like, it's just a movie.
Thank God I can go home. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm going home, man.
Like War of the Worlds or Independence
right.
Day.
You might have jumped 3 dozen times in your seat, like, oh. But then at the end,
You don't want to be anally probed by aliens.
You get to go home.
You don't want that. Nobody.
And but then when it really happens to you, that's why I tell everybody, sometimes when people have experiences, not like, nowadays everybody's trying to record something, this is like when things happen to you unexpectedly. And if you're kind of a rational person, you do like this internal checklist, and it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. And you come to this truth that everywhere you go, there you are. You can't escape it. You might try to bury it, forget it, pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But still, whatever it was, whether there was a paranormal or a ghost or an ET. And by the way, I mean, I used to attend with a group. They were into, MUFON would come and do presentations for us, and anything having to do with ETs and UFOs. And I had more than one person come up to me where there was a crossover between not even abductions, just UFO sightings, and then paranormal events taking place in their home.
Wow, yeah. Okay.
That they themselves couldn't explain, like, what did one thing have to do with the other? So
Yeah. Deborah Jordan Cobble, do you know her? She was.
No.
Do you know the book Intruders by Bud Hopkins?
Yes.
You've heard of that book? She was the real life girl that book is about. She's
really?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff going on in her house. Katie Page, all kinds of stuff going on in her house. I've met so many great UFO people the last 2 years.
Well, no, even this book that, these, not the present team that's out at Skinwalker Ranch, but the previous ones that he wrote that book about the hitchhiker effect, where, they had personnel that were just people working there, like security. And when I guess they would leave, I don't know if it was for the winter, they all had weird stuff happening at home.
At their house. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's like, you got to figure out, like, where does this all tie in?
I hope we learn in our lifetimes, I mean.
Do you ever think, Dan, that they're actually going to give us a true disclosure? Do you think the government's ever going to do that?
Well, many of my members in my group are working actively in Washington, D.C. with Congress to make that happen. And many other people say it's not going to happen that way. It's going to be more whistleblowers coming forward. Last month, there was a best-selling book called Imminent by Lou Elizondo. New York Times best-selling book, Lou Elizondo. He was one of the heads of ATIP, which is one of the top UFO groups. He was the head guy for years. He just came out with a tell-all book. It's a new bestseller book. More and more people are going to bypass Congress, in my opinion, and they're going to write books. They're just going to write books and do TV interviews to get the truth out. At some point, there'll be so many credible people saying what's going on that we won't need the president or Congress. It'll just happen.
Right. Yeah, it's like
that's
maybe
where
the ETs will take it
or,
over and
or
just
the,
decide to land somewhere.
Or the ETs, exactly, land on the White House lawn or Times Square, and they say, "Okay, it's enough already."
Exactly.
We know you want to know we're here. Yeah, we're here. We've been here for a long, long time.
And then what? And then what?
And my 90-year-old mother goes, I hope I live to see disclosure. My mother's 90 years ago.
I know, and it's like, man, I'm going to tell you something. Because you know how they always say, well, they don't tell the public because people will go crazy. I'm thinking, what? I initially will think some people will go, what?
That's not
but
the
then
real
since we've already kind of a little bit, for lack of a better word, we've been conditioned to that.
It's not the real reason. We don't
people
want.
People are going to have what do you think?
The craft have been reverse engineered. I found out after he died, my father was involved with the reverse engineering of UFO technology. I know that for a fact. We don't want the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans and the Iranians to know the technology that we've gotten from the crashed UFOs. Extraterrestrials have energy, that free energy. If they gave it to humans, we would not need gas, oil, coal, lithium, or nuclear energy. All the energy would be obsolete. All the oil billionaires would go out of business. That's another big reason. The panic reason, it might be a reason, I'm not sure. Avi Loeb, who's a friend of mine, Harvard professor, he said that the extraterrestrials themselves have told people in the military, we're not ready to be revealed yet. We'll tell you when we want to be revealed, the extraterrestrials.
So do you think a lot of UFOs are really man-made?
I know they are. My father built some. Yes, I know they are. Here's what I've read. Out of 100, 33 will be man-made military drones or futuristic craft using extraterrestrial technology, but man-made. 1/3 are extraterrestrial craft. 1/3 are misidentified balloons,
Yeah,
birds, clouds,
sure.
things. That's what all the research indicates. It's in thirds like that.
So do you think there's a group of ETs that really that let's say we're talking here people behind the scenes that have had some type of contact, whether it's, you know, reverse engineering
No,
or whatever,
I know that's
that
real.
they don't have, like, we know they're around, but that we've never spoken, like they're the mystery group of ETs and we really don't know what they're
I
about.
think there's a book by a guy named Craig Campobasso. He's a member of
Yes.
my group.
Yes.
I think in his book, it's called the Alien Almanac. I think he
Mm-hmm.
says there's 130 different races of
There you
aliens.
go. Yeah.
So there's 130. Well, that's a lot of races. I think
Mm-hmm.
only a few have been on Earth. Nick Pope is a friend of mine. He says from his research, the extraterrestrials, many of them are evil and demonic, and be careful what we wish for because we don't want to
Right.
know. We don't want to know about them. They're not nice.
Right.
And
Like
then
we
my
can't pick and choose.
my friend Steve Bassett, who's like my best friend, he goes, "Oh, it's going to be so great when the aliens, when everyone knows, and everything's going to be happy, rainbows and unicorns." And I go, Steve, have you talked to Nick Pope about his demonic alien? I don't think it's going to be unicorns and rainbows, Steve. I'm not
It's
sure
like,
about
you know, what is it, that scene from Independence Day where they're like, welcome, welcome, and then they get
Yeah,
blasted. It's
and
like,
then
that's the end of
exactly.
that.
That's exactly, yeah. Talk to Nick Pope, and he'll tell
Yeah.
you that.
I
Anyway,
think,
I have to go to an event.
yes, of course. Thank you, Dan. It has been wonderful to speak to you.
You too,
Are you
man.
working
Thanks.
on any new projects?
I'm working on a 4-part TV miniseries based on After They Came.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple of agents that I'm working with. That's what I'm working on now. I pitched it as a movie. No, people said, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Try it as a TV show. So now I'm trying it as a TV
Okay.
4-part miniseries. I'm done with books for a while. Oh, my brand new book. I'll plug this
Okay.
at the tail end. This just
Okay.
came out a few days ago. This is 5, a novella. It's a short story. It's about a serial killer from 1870s England who is a famous actor in the Hungarian theater by day, and at night he murders women. Then he dies, and then 100 years later, he's reincarnated and becomes the biggest pop music star in the world in the 1970s, in American 1970s. But he inherited the spirit of the first guy. So he's the biggest pop star in the world, and he kills women at night as a serial killer. I was thinking one day, what if Bruce Springsteen was a serial
It's like,
killer? Wouldn't
let
that
me,
be the most incongruous thing? So that's where 5 came from. And
let
this
me
just
tell
came
you.
out the other day.
Well, you know
It's
what?
also my 5th book, so that's why I called it 5.
It, that's a whole nother show, but yeah, that you could have.
Well, we
I
could
mean,
do
I've done
another
enough
show.
regressions for reincarnation and
We could do,
attachments and
I would
things
do
like
another
that.
show
That you,
with you if you want. That'd be
yeah,
fun.
there's a lot of stuff that's involved with that. But yeah, you know what? I'm gonna say real quick. The other day, a couple of weeks ago, I binged on the X Files, which I hadn't seen in a
I
long
love the X
time.
Files with all my heart. Yeah,
Oh my god, it was like, oh,
what
I
a, such
wish
a great show.
they wouldn't
God,
have stopped the show.
what a great show. I've seen
And I wish
every
they
episode
hadn't
of
killed
at least three.
the what was those three guys?
The Lone Gunman. Yeah, the
The
Lone Gunman.
lone gunman. It was like, oh, why'd you kill these characters?
Actually, a friend of
Okay.
mine is friends with the guy that had the long blonde hair. I have to meet him someday.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway,
Again, thank
I got to run.
yes, yes.
Dan Harary
You
author.com,
got
Dan
it.
Harary author.com. Thank you, Marlene.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Oh wow. Mm-mm. Yeah, it's true. I hadn't seen the X Files for like a really long time. You know, time goes by when you're having fun. I can't remember which channel I had that they had everything all from the beginning, from the pilot movie all the way to the end, and you know that they did the was it they did the shows and then the movies after the fact, like a couple of years after they ended the series. You know, everybody's grown older and kind of wiser, and and it was like after, I guess, when you binge it, but you know, not like before where you know, if you would have had to see that, it would have taken years to go through the series. And that's another thing. Remember, these were the times where seasons had like 20 something episodes, which is great, by the way. I really miss that. But anyway, it was like, oh my god, you know what? I wish they would have kept this going. And I know that eventually you have to run out of ideas, but still, it was like I was looking at that. I was like, God, I got a million ways this could have gone, you know. And they always the last episode, basically, like even though they killed the lone gunman off, which I thought was a mistake, they shouldn't have done that. But they kind of they kind of leave you where their child, which you're always thinking is um I don't know. And you're not sure it was this child totally an alien and was implanted into her, into Scully, or was she the mother, like literally biologically the mother, and he was a hybrid. That's the part. It was like, is he a hybrid or was she just used to carry him? Because that was basically part of the impetus, in the show on and off. They would go into episodes where it had nothing to do with that. But basically, that last episode, it kind of left it hanging where you think he's dead, but he's not. And, he's apparently, because of his alien DNA or something, in other words, and I was thinking, are they going to do something with this? But, I understand if it doesn't. But yeah, that was a great show and way ahead of its time as far as going into all these different types of, besides the that extraterrestrial abduction thing. They did, let me tell you, that first guy, that one that was eating people's livers, it was like that was so, it was great. It was gross but great. I was like, and that he could just, I mean, that took really a lot of imagination. Remember, this came out in the 90s when this show came out. So yeah, those are some of the stuff that sometimes I wish that's, when I say sometimes, that's missing from some of it. How's this? Lately, what I see is that a lot of the shows that have to do with either the paranormal, whether it's UFO or ghosts or anything, they're like, it's like a reality TV. Don't get me wrong. Yes, you know, I get it. They're interesting, but after a while, it's like no more reality TVs where they do the interview and then they have actors playing the part, reenacting whatever they're talking. Yeah, let's go back to like in this case, like the X-Files format, where it's fictional characters, which are very interesting characters. That's why you care about them and what happens to them. And going to storylines that, yeah, you look at them, you're like, man, that's way out there. But okay, that was part of the fun of the X-Files, especially when they were coming out with stuff that you're like, huh? That they just went and wrote about things, conspiracy theories and weird creatures and, hitmen from another planet kind of deal that were indestructible, by the way. Yeah. Yeah, I wish they would make a comeback with that type of paranormal show. No more reality shows. To be honest with you, I'm kind of like, I'm done with reality shows. Like I said, the last ones I saw, which was pretty good, was pretty decent, was UFO Cowboys or Cowboy, something like that. That was pretty decent. The cast that they put together was pretty good, and the format was different. But and in other people, I've always, after a while, these shows revisit the same haunted locations, like that one. Now that you know things of this nature. So yeah, that's the, I don't know what's, I mean, we've written this reality show wave for what, 20 something years, right? And even now, I'll look at some of the older shows, I'll catch them on one of these channels that has these reruns. And some obviously are much better than others. Not only in just the production, as far as, when they did it, but in just the quality of the stories or who they were interviewing, they're just better. They have more. And then there's some other stuff that is like, that's way out there. This is BS. Yeah. If these stories are true, I'm the Queen of England. It's like, nah, sorry. And the reason why I guess I say this is that since I've been involved with this work since the 1990s, and I've interviewed and been present with people that have had really, truly paranormal experiences, you kind of know the earmarks of when somebody's having a genuine experience. By the way, when they believe it. I'm not always saying that what occurs to certain people or persons is genuinely paranormal, but when you speak to them, you know when this person genuinely believes that what's happening to them is supernatural. Not like I'm, not like I'm making stuff up. And then sometimes in the investigation, come to find out, no, this is not a paranormal thing in origin. Sometimes it is, but what I'm saying is, you understand, whether it's body language, you interviewing a person, there's all these things that we take in that I know you're for real, and you're a bullshitter. All right, it's like, okay, all right, we'll go with that version. It's like, so yeah, the reality is like, we need to come up with something different, or and this is the thing I tell everybody. Back in 03, 04, when this paranormal reality stuff was just starting to take off, I was contacted by a bunch of different companies, like, production companies or people that were seeing, I guess, where this was going, about cases. And that was the thing. I very rarely did historic places. Most of my cases were people that had experience. And it was like, I cannot, I have tons of cases, but I can't talk to you about them. Oh, can we contact this person? It's like, no, you can't, because the only way you're going to get to them is through me. And I agreed. And by the way, I'm not talking here waiver. I was not going to disclose what happened or who they were. I mean, I could talk about a case, like, good luck on finding out who this happened to. All right. But because, like I said, sometimes when people really have a genuine supernatural experience, they want to keep a lid on it. They're scared. And it's not only how can I tell you? Not only because it could affect their job or their neighbors are going to look at them weird. It's just like, how can I tell you? Just like, if we keep the lid on this eventually this will fade. And that example that he gave about how they're having this moment with the Ouija board, and he recognizes this is his great-grandfather, but his daughter still, and his son, they're like, get rid of it. We don't care if it's your great-grandfather, whatever, or no, our great-grandfather, your grandfather. We don't want any more to do with this. And that's the feeling you get, that even when you go to some of these that had gone to investigations, even when somehow or other it was suspected that it could have been a family member, people, really people that are really wigged out, scared, like, they were like, no, we don't want this person, auntie, cousin, grandma, daddy. It was like, so that's why when I see a lot of these shows where people are like, comfort us, like, my experience, people, as much as it touches them, at the same time, they recognize, and I want to say on a soul level, plus it scares the what out of you, even if it's a known person. How's that? You realize this person is deceased and I'm not. I'm supposed to be here. They're not. And you'll even hear it even from people that have those, what they call the crisis apparitions, where they'll see a person maybe that died and they might not even be aware of it, or a person that's recently died. And in other words, it's not like something horrible or what is that? They know who that is. Still, it's very disquieting. They don't like it. They're like, no, I don't want this person around. I feel bad, but I don't want that. Like, in other words, like, living with, and I tell everybody, one time I used to work with this girl. This was many years ago. And, her, she said she was like a teenager, and her grandfather didn't live in this country, lived somewhere else, but was always known. He would always have a cowboy hat on. Always. Like, this was his, even as an old man, he was always wearing a cowboy hat. And she says one day, she's lived in this regular, not very big house, but She says their bedrooms were down a hallway at the house. And I think if remember correctly, she was like 15 or 16. She was alone at the house. And she says one time she's like in the other part of the house, and but it's one of these where you have line of sight down the hallway that leads to the bedrooms. And she saw him, her grandfather, cross from one bedroom. I guess the entrances to the bedrooms faced each other, where he crossed the hallway from one room to the other. And she was like, and by the way, at that point he was alive. As far as they knew, he was alive. She goes, I knew it was my grandfather because I saw him he had the cowboy hat on. And she like called her mom, and sure enough, later that day or the next morning, they got a call that he had passed away. In other words, he was dead when he saw her. But she says, I knew it. When I told my mom, we all knew something had happened with him. And I remember her saying it caught me by surprise, even though I knew who it was, but it was like, I didn't want to see that again. Yeah, you don't. So, yeah, that's now I will tell you one thing that I think is fascinating is this bleed over between UFO sightings. And I'm going to say here, I'm not talking UFO sightings of man-made origin. How's that? Because I do agree with Dan. I believe there's probably is a lot of technology out there, and a lot of UFO sightings are not really extraterrestrial in origin. How's that? But how does one thing trigger the other? How does a sighting of a UFO, whatever you see, whether it's lights or an actual, I'm not even talking here visitation or abduction, and then you start having some type of paranormal events happening at your house. And if you listen to some of the stories, it's not like, oh, you're seeing a ghost. But you remember what he was describing, where all of a sudden you'll hear weird noises in the house, things fall off the shelf, things that like, and then it takes a while for people, sometimes they catch on, like, wait a minute, the nexus of the origin was after I saw that, whatever it was, lights in the sky, and again, I go back to, and I know there's a segment of abductees and contactees that are very raw for, how can I say, the ET connection. And maybe they've been lucky enough, but I still am very, very cautious about that. Because if we go on the premise of that they're superior to us in technology, at least, then we could be at the short end of that stick. Because let's face it, if they can, and by this, they might not be necessarily more intelligent than us. They're just more advanced. Maybe their civilization is, eventually we'll get to that level of technology. Left to ourselves, we would eventually get there. They might not be more intelligent than us. They just they've been around, their species has been around longer to evolve to where they've thought of all these different advances. Maybe they've been able to develop themselves telepathically. I'm not saying they're like that prototypical alien with a huge head because they're so intelligent, their brains are. But let's face it, at some point they're not smarter, but they're more technologically advanced than us. That usually that doesn't bode well for the civilization or species, whatever you want to call it, who's less advanced. Because basically you're depending on the kindness of the ETs, and then again, is it kindness, or, let's go down the idea of, like the X-Files, that they've come to some agreement with them as far as whether it's hybridization or genetic material or something behind the scenes that we're not aware of. There's still something there that speaks to what's the word I'm looking for? That you can be nice, but what if they decided they don't want to be nice? I've always thought, and this is just me if I think, I'm not saying that this is what it is. It might not be. That maybe despite what we think, maybe their attempts of hybridization is because maybe living for them here on Earth is difficult. All right. Maybe where they come from, this is not the ideal place. So the best thing, you acclimate, you crossbreed to produce a version of them of themselves, which with the human component can do well in this atmosphere, in this gravity here on Earth. All right. And maybe this is they're saying this is the only way our version of us can keep on existing in this planet is to genetically modify our offspring with their material and produce a hybrid that living here on the earth will be just fine. That's okay. They can breathe the air well. They deal well with the gravity. Not like us. And let's go down the rabbit hole, shall we? What if, let's say they're a group of aliens, one of many, I don't know, but let's say with one, we'll just pick one. Who, let's say they've been here. Yeah, I'd use one time that they're stuck here. Let's say you crash land and you can't leave, and you realize we can kind of exist here, but it's really difficult on us. And you got X amount of time, whatever their lifespan is. Maybe compared to ours, it's very long, but it's finite, in other words. Plus, like everything else, you start losing, you can't keep interbreeding because eventually you get genetic, your offspring have a lot of genetic problems. In other words, your DNA pool, whatever it is. So maybe they've been losing members, they've died off. They've grown old, they just die off, or they crash land, or they crash in a UFO in a vehicle that just goes there. Depending on how many original numbers there are to begin with. So they have no other options. Like we can't breed with each other anymore. The furry we got, we can't. We realize that. So what's our options? Well, we can breed with the humans, produce something that's better acclimated to this planet. And that's the only way we're going to breed. And maybe, why not? Maybe we can't produce offspring like, God, no. We understand mating the way humans mate, or with the way animals, here on this earth mate. But maybe the way they reproduce, or maybe they found a way to. You have to understand, not all species, their DNA is just like, no way these two species can ever copulate and produce offspring. They're just not genetically can complement each other. They're not going to work. So maybe they have somebody that figured out, yeah, we could do this and we do that. And we need some other genetic material, but we can't grow it inside. In other words, what we think of as a pregnancy, maybe they reproduce not by pregnancy. That's just me. But they figured out a way to harness part of us and part of them, and hopefully came up with something. And this is the only way we can continue with our race. Otherwise, we're just going to die out and that's it. It's over. Isn't that a great sci-fi story? Then you have the other things, the Pleiadians, where the Pleiadians, all these other ones, the ones that took Travis Walton, that's a very disturbing book, by the way, and the movie. And then I think there's others that, because if you look at some of these stories about whether it's a cattle mutilation or anything, it's like there's almost a sadistic flavor to them, and that's not good for us. All right. And then, of course, I'm sure everybody's heard, are we looking at, where people are saying, well, these ETs, is it that the ETs are demons or the demons are ETs? Where does it start? The chicken or the egg first? But in other words, they are, in other words, what we've called demons are really ETs. And, because we always think of demons as fallen angels. Let's say the devils, all of this, Satan, Lucifer, fallen angels, etc., etc. What if they're not, in as far as a storyline, what they are in reality is ETs. ETs. Or it's the other way around. Like, how does that work? Could it be something like that? Could it be something as horrible as that? And like I said, there's a few good books out there. One's by Dr. Modi, Modi. The other one is by oh my God, he already passed away. Back in the 90s, he wrote the book. He was, a matter of fact, he was a hypnotherapist, but he was a doctor also, which, by the way, is how they stumble a lot, where they would be hypnotizing somebody and then they would come across an attachment, and the attachment was an extraterrestrial. And by the way, they're writing these stories back in the 90s and late 80s. This is not recent stuff that they're talking about. All right. Let's see. Let me see if I can find that in other words, this wasn't like, this is not like, this is a trend, so now they were talking about doing regressions or just hypnotherapy. Here's Shantula Modi. All right. She wrote a book. This is, let me see, 1997. All right. Let me see if I could show it to you. I mean, I read her book, which she was, if I remember correctly, she's a psychiatrist, right? And this lady was purely like, this is a science-based person. In other words, she wasn't looking to, and let me see. Where did it go? Let's see. No. Anyway, shoot. Tire screen. No, that's not what I want. Yeah. Let me see if I can make it work that way. It always frustrates me sometimes. Let me tell you something. I'm ready to let go of this program that I'm using. Here it is. Hold on. Here we go. All right. This, as you can tell, this book was written back in 97. All right. And it's called Remarkable Healings. But in it, she describes how she had come across attachments, all right, that were not spiritual attachment. In other words, she wasn't doing this work like from a paranormal slant. She was using hypnosis as part of her treatment to, like, same thing, how people maybe, remember things or help them with whatever. But in the course of doing that, which, by the way, almost all the best books that I've come across, which are from very reputable sources, this is the other one. This is the best. Spirit Releasement Therapy, a Technique Manual by the man, Dr. Baldwin. Hold on. This, I read this. Same thing. Where it's basically clearing negative energies, blah, 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 blah. Same thing. He ran across extraterrestrials. And let me see. Let's see. There we go. Okay, there you go. That book, that was one of the first books that I had read because it's a technique manual. All right. And this is 95. This is from 1995 when he wrote this. By the way, I mean, he had this, and Edith Fiore, which is great. I read her book too. There's another one by Dr. Ireland, which is excellent as well. And they all talk about Unquiet Dead. This is great. The same thing here. Healing Lost Souls, Releasing Unwanted Spirits from Your Energy Body. All of these are different books that have to do with spirit attachment and using hypnotherapy and hypnosis to release them. Almost all these writers or practitioners, in other words, almost all of them describe coming across ETs as an attachment. And they were surprised, by the way. They were very surprised. And when asked, why were they there? And some of the answers were to monitor the human being. And I guess what people don't realize, and that's where it takes the leap, where the attachment supposedly from an ET is we always think of even ETs as a physical form. Like, how can somebody attach to you if they have that maybe they have the ability, however it is, because at the end of the day, they're extraterrestrials, that they could invade your body or your aura and attach themselves to you without physically being there. Like they said, some of the things were, they were monitoring the person. All right. And in a couple of the instances, they're basically being told by let's say the doctor, whoever is doing the hypnosis, you're not supposed to be doing, like, in other words, they didn't get it. They didn't see what was wrong with it. And in some cases also it wasn't only just physical observations that they were trying to get. It was like almost like gauging emotional. And in some cases I've even heard where they will put a person into certain scenarios, stressors, just to see what the reaction is. Which leads one to believe, do they not lack, that's a bad word, but maybe emotion as we know it? Like, in other words, when you see or hear something and you don't get it, so you want to like see somebody, like, how does that work? It's because you don't get it, and it's almost the same thing because it's kind of alien to you, no pun intended. And the only way to understand it in their case is like, when Jane Goodall went and lived out there with the chimps, so she could observe it firsthand, so that, well, maybe this was like, we're the chimps. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's a field that I think, if you get away from what's the word I'm looking for? From the sensationalism, it's very interesting. Is there ETs out there? Aren't there ETs? Is this like a big giant, I don't know, BS? Are they demonic? Are they angelic? Are they just extraterrestrials from another planet? And we're giving them like a spin of and I don't know. There's part of me that's like, how much does the government know? Or, like I've said, maybe the government doesn't know as much as we think they do. And they're afraid to disclose if they get hit with questions, let's say by the public. We don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Do you know if there's where they come from? No. Do you know how many there are? No, we don't know. I think that would wig people out even worse than figuring out that there was some type of conspiracy between the government of maybe worldwide, for all we know, and the ETs. If you're told, well, yeah, we know they're around, and no, we don't have any treaties or anything. Maybe, yeah, we back engineered some stuff because we've taken technology from crash sites, but not really. We really don't know that much about them. Think about that. Like, we don't know enough about them to say these are their intentions. This is what they're capable of. This is what they want from us. Yeah, it's like, what's worse, knowing or not knowing? Again. And again, think about it. Would you rather live in a world that is in now with the possibility of extraterrestrial life, or living in a world where no? Let's pretend, let's make believe somehow that there was no crash in 1947. What was it? New Mexico. None of these other things. Would you prefer that? Or would it be inevitable that we would think, hey, there's got to be something else out there besides us? I don't know. Let me tell you something, though. For a lot of people, ignorance is bliss. Because, like I said, and I know firsthand, a lot of people get mesmerized with the of having that firsthand experience. I want to have it. I want to see it, whatever. I want to taste it, feel it, whatever. And then when they do, and it goes from being the possibility, oh my God, it's so exciting, to the reality of their life, like Travis. Well, even though his is kind of an extreme, and I know why. They want to go back to, I wish I didn't know about this. I wish I hadn't had that experience. I want to go back to when this was just a possibility or a sci-fi themed whatever, and yeah, whatever. Sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for, in other words. So again, guys, thank you for being part of my audience. I will be back next week. Hopefully there will not be any more hurricanes, man. I'm telling you, I've grown up with hurricanes, but still. You know, when you're a kid, it's like, oh, this is great. No lights and no school. Yay. But when you become an adult, it's like, what? I mean, besides the fact that you're faced with a lot of hardship, especially economically, or if your house is, um, you know, it's like, I'm done. And everybody says, everywhere you go, look what's happening out in Wyoming with those wildfires. And he was talking about being in California. I don't think I could handle that, because at least with the hurricane, you could like prepare or leave. I'm out of here. Bye. Or those people out in the plains, like Oklahoma, where these tornadoes come out of nowhere, and that's it. It's, as a matter of fact, like I said, we had more damage here from these tornadoes that came out. But and let me segue real quick into reality. Let's leave the paranormal a moment. Even though we could, what? Maybe I'll get somebody. Would you guys be interested in getting somebody out here to talk about weather manipulation? Because now I'm seeing that this is like everybody's so wigged out, like weather manipulation. I'm gonna see if I can dig up somebody that will come in and I can interview them about that. Because sometimes it's like, man, what in the world is going on? Even the way that it came out of the off the coast of Mexico versus off the coast of Africa, and then it comes across the Atlantic, and sometimes it will come into the Gulf of Mexico. Depends, and then it comes in on the West Coast versus the East Coast of Florida. But still, it's like so much stuff is going on nowadays. But anyway, and then and you could tell, and by the way, I'm going to say Florida, but from what I understand, this is happening all over the country. It's like everybody groans because you're like, after all these disasters, you're like, the insurance companies are going to spank me hard, even if nothing happened, right? Because, so it's like, yeah. Like I said, when you grow up and you become an adult, you look at things differently. It's like, yeah, could it be? Yeah, one of those things. C'est la vie, mon ami. So again, guys, please don't forget to sign up for my newsletter at Substack. Go to mppellicer.com. Remember, I have links on either mppellicer.com, Miami Ghost Chronicles. They're all part of the same website. I have links there to all the podcast and video versions of all the shows. Stories of the Supernatural, Nightshade Diary, Supernatural Storytime, Eerie News, blah, 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 blah. And again, I'm about to start bringing in guests or scheduling them for season 17 of Stories of the Supernatural. Yeah. And now let's see what happens. We live in interesting times. Even though there's moments that you're like, man, I wish it was like nice and dull again. I must be getting old. Or what was it, like the progressive commercial? What's the weather? What's the dew point or something crap? Anyway, guys, till next time, take care. You're all wonderful.